All right, let's talk about a name that's pretty much become a synonym for, evil genius, Machiavelli. But what if I told you that everything you think you know about his infamous book, The Prince, is, well, wrong? We're going to peel back 500 years of notoriety to really get to know the man, his world, and what might be one of the most misunderstood books of all time. See, at its core, The Prince isn't really a manual for tyrants. No, it's something way more personal and honestly kind of desperate. You could make a case that it's the most infamous job application ever written. So, here's the big question I want you to hold on to as we go through this. What if the world's most notorious book on power was really just a CV? A resume, written by this brilliant but totally out-of-work politician who was desperately trying to prove his worth to the exact same people who had just ruined his life. Okay, so to really get that, we've got to start with the myth. I mean, why does this guy have such a sinister reputation? It all comes down to the advice in the book, which, let's be honest, can sound shockingly ruthless. Just listen to this little gem, for example. He says, men ought either to be well treated or crushed. I mean, wow. His point is that if you have to hurt someone, you better make it so severe they can't even think about getting revenge. And it's exactly quotes like this, ripped out of their context, that built this whole dark legend around him. And this legacy got so huge that it actually created its own word. To be Machiavellian, that means being cunning, scheming, totally unscrupulous. It's a brand, really, and a powerful one. But the actual guy behind the brand, so much more complex and, honestly, way more interesting. So let's do it. Let's go behind the myth. Because to understand the book, you have to understand the life of the man who wrote it. And what a life it was. Full of these incredible highs and just crushing lows, all tied up in the fate of his beloved city, Florence. You can really think of Machiavelli's life in 3 acts. First, there's his youth, happening right during the golden age of Florence. Then comes Act 2. For 18 years, he's a big deal, a high-ranking official, a respected diplomat for the Florentine Republic. But it's that 3rd act, that's the one that changes everything. In 1512, his entire world just collapses. The famous Medici family comes back to power, the Republic is toast, and Machiavelli, he doesn't just lose his job, he gets thrown in prison. And this is so important. His advice wasn't just some theory he cooked up. For almost 20 years, his job was to meet and analyze the most powerful people in Europe. He was right there, seeing firsthand what worked and what spectacularly didn't. He learned from Katharina Sforza that having the people on your side is way better than any fortress. He watched Cesar Borgia's insane rise and equally dramatic fall. This wasn't philosophy class. This was field research in the brutal, real-world game of power. And then, just like that, it all ended. When the Medici stormed back into power, Machiavelli wasn't just fired, he was accused of being part of a conspiracy against them. He was arrested and tortured with this horrible method called the strapado. Basically, they tie your arms behind your back and then yank you up into the air by your wrists. Just imagine. He insisted he was innocent, and they eventually let him go, but he was a broken man, banished to his little farm, an outcast. And this is really the heart of the story. I want you to just imagine you're him for a second. Your career is completely destroyed. You've been physically tortured. You're broke. You're exiled. What on earth do you do? Well, you do the one thing you're an absolute master at. You write. There's this incredible letter he wrote to a friend where he describes his lonely new life. He says during the day he's just hanging out at the local tavern, arguing with butchers and millers over pennies. So mundane. But then, in the evening, he goes home, puts on his old fancy court robes, and steps into his study. And there, he says he converses with the great minds of history. He's feeding his mind, right? And he says he wrote down what he learned from these conversations, and that he composed a small work on how to rule. That small work? It was The Prince. So, if you take away one thing, let it be this. He wrote The Prince for one single reason: to get a job. That's it. He dedicated the book to the new guy in charge, Lorenzo de' Medici, hoping to prove that his 15 years of hard-won experience were way too valuable to just be left to rot on some farm. It was his resume. It was him shouting, "Look what I can do. I understand power like no one else." And here's the beautiful, tragic irony of it all. In that same letter, he's practically begging his friend to put in a good word for him. He pleads, "Look at how poor I am. That's proof I'm honest, right? If I'd been a crook, I'd be rich." He just keeps insisting he's always been loyal. Think about that. The man whose name would become a synonym for being faithless and sneaky wrote his most famous book as a plea for a job, arguing that he was the most loyal guy around. Okay, so with all that in mind, let's look at the advice itself. Because when you see it this way, it's not about being evil just for the fun of it. It's a brutally realistic survival guide. And it's written specifically for a new ruler, someone exactly like the Medici, who's just grabbed power and is, frankly, in a very dangerous spot. Right off the bat, Machiavelli makes this really key distinction. He says, look, if you inherit a kingdom that your family's been running for ages, it's pretty easy. People are used to you, they know the deal. But if you're a new ruler, oh man, everything is a potential threat. The people who helped you get power now think you owe them big time. The people you just conquered, they hate your guts. You are literally surrounded by danger from all sides. And he doesn't just speak in hypotheticals. He uses real-world case studies to prove his points. For example, he lays out step by step the 5 huge mistakes King Louis XII of France made that cost him everything in Italy. Like, by helping the Pope get more powerful, Louis basically created a major rival who, surprise, surprise, later helped kick him out. It's the super clinical, clear-eyed breakdown of political cause and effect. Or take this other bit of super pragmatic analysis. He compares 2 ways of governing. You've got a place like the Ottoman Empire, which is ruled by one absolute boss. That's really hard to conquer because everyone is united behind one guy. But once you do conquer it and get rid of the ruling family, it's actually pretty easy to hold on to. Then you've got a kingdom like France, which is full of powerful, independent lords. That's easy to conquer. All you got to do is convince one disgruntled noble to help you out. But it's almost impossible to hold on to because those very same nobles will immediately start trying to challenge you. And it's from observations like these that he pulls his famous, and yeah, pretty cold-blooded rules, like this one. He who is the cause of another becoming powerful is ruined. And you have to ask, why? Well, it's simple. Because you've just given them a roadmap to power, and you can bet they'll eventually use that roadmap against you. It's a timeless warning, really, about creating your own worst enemy. So the big question is, why are we still talking about this book 500 years later? I mean, fun fact, the Medici basically ignored his CV. He never got the job. So why does it endure? I think it's because the advice, as cynical as it sounds, still rings true. I mean, just look at some of these takeaways. In politics, there are no perfectly safe courses. Or how about, a prince must know how to do wrong, according to necessity. He wasn't telling leaders go out and be evil. He was telling them that to survive in a dangerous world, you have to understand that sometimes you're going to face terrible choices. The goal isn't wickedness for its own sake. The goal is stability. The goal is survival. Ultimately, I think The Prince sticks around because it describes the world as it is, not how we might wish it would be. Machiavelli just flat out refused to write about some imaginary perfect utopia. Instead, he wrote about people and governments as he actually saw them. Ambitious, afraid, and yeah, usually driven by their own self-interest. Which kind of leaves us with one last big question to chew on. Was Machiavelli really writing a handbook for tyrants? Or, by laying out the brutal, naked mechanics of power for everyone to see, was he actually writing a handbook for the rest of us? A guide on how to spot tyrants and maybe how to survive them? That's the question that makes his little job application absolutely timeless. Thanks for watching The Explainer.